Hey everybody, and welcome to Shane Talks Politics, where I get to ramble on about the things I find important, and you get to listen and comment afterwards. Today I want to do something a little bit different. Last week I spoke on the events surrounding the special session at our legislature and how I thought things went from there. And at the very end of it, I spoke directly to our governor. I had a little address to him in which I referred to him as a tyrant. And no doubt many people out there thought, well, tyrant, is that a little extreme? Is that a little over the top? And many people probably thought, no, he's a tyrant. So let's talk about that today. Is Governor Little a tyrant? I'm not going to answer that question directly. Instead, I'm going to let our forefathers answer that question. When our forefathers separated from Great Britain, they wrote our Declaration of Independence. And in that, they referred to the king as a tyrant. And they listed out all of the reasons that they believed he was a tyrannical leader and why they needed to separate and form their own government and form their own nation. So I always want my videos to be somewhat educational in nature. And I think it's important, if we're going to answer this question, that we start off with our Declaration of Independence. And I want to read the preamble to that, and then I want to get into why they believed he was a tyrant and why I believe our governor is a tyrant. And it's really interesting because you're going to see today that there's a lot of things that our governor is doing in the state of Idaho that our forefathers would have found very offensive because they listed those exact same things in our Declaration of Independence. So without further ado, let's first bring up the Declaration and let's just go over it. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. I absolutely love that document. And they chose their words so gracefully so beautifully and so carefully. Every single word was important, and they understood that, because they weren't just addressing the King of Great Britain. They were addressing the world, to explain to the world and to get the support of the world their reasons why they needed to separate from Great Britain and why they believed that the King of Great Britain was a tyrant. And they go on to list all of those evidences as to why the King of Great Britain was a tyrant and why his history of oppression on them could only end in their separation and formation of a new government. I'm not going to go over all of those because they don't all apply to this situation. But I am going to list a few of them, and I want to compare and contrast them to our current governor. So I want to start off with their accusation that said he has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. So, Governor Little, on April 12th of this year, Governor Little, let me see if I can bring this up a little bit bigger so you can read this. Governor Little had already signed several declarations surrounding COVID-19. He signed 46601, which was martial law. We'll get into that in a moment. And he signed 46-1008, which was a declaration of emergency. And in doing so, he gave himself pretty much absolute power. Well, not pretty much. He gave himself absolute power, only restrained by the Constitution. And even then, he infringed on it a bit. So on April 12th, our House of Representatives wrote him this following letter. They said, "Dear Governor Little, amid the COVID-19 pandemic, the government of the state of Idaho finds itself in uncharted waters that we are navigating to the best of our ability. As elected officials, we also have an obligation to faithfully discharge our duties according to our oaths of office, and it is in that spirit that I write you." Oops. See if we can get that back up here. The strain on our fellow Idahoans is palpable, be it on our businesses, on their employees and families, or on our healthcare providers and their patients and families, Idaho elected officials. Most prominently, you should continue to respond calmly with both compassion and resolve. I commend you for your leadership in this emergency. I know you've heard from the critics in and out of government complaining that you have done either too much or too little to control the spread of the virus. And like you, I hear the same messages. During times of emergency, Idaho Code, this is the important part. Idaho Code expands the scope of your executive powers to include some that are normally reserved to the legislative process. That expansion understandably focuses the attention of the House of Representatives on how you exercise that temporary power. Members I have spoken to do not question your goodwill or your intentions. These extraordinary times, however, cause them to think also of the future and the precedents being set. Raising these issues now is respectful of our system of representative democracy and separation of powers envisioned by the nation's founding fathers and enshrined in Idaho's Constitution. As James Madison of Virginia put it in 1778 in Federalist number 51, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. So they were still being a little bit amenable at this point in time. They weren't happy with how the governor had taken their power away from them. Our legislator was saying, look, they're we understand that these are different times and that there's some changes are necessary. However, the people are looking at us to how we handle this, and a lot of precedents are going to be set in the future. And there's a balance of power. And you've usurped that balance of power. And in fact, he took complete control. So fast forward a little bit longer into May 20th, and people were getting a little bit more upset by the governor's dictatorship. And I call it a dictatorship because it was. He had taken 46601 gave him martial law. And in doing so, he wasn't listening to the legislature anymore. Governor Little now was saying, I'm the authority and I'm going to do what I want. And I really don't care what you think about it. And frankly, I don't even want to hear from you, because many of the legislature had reached out to him and they said, we want to be a part of this process. We control the public purse. We want to be a part of the process. And governor just ignored them. Sound familiar? And Kootenai County there took a little bit more stronger action. And they said, now therefore be it resolved by the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee that we recognize the governor's declaration of an extreme emergency invoked a call of the legislature under Article 3, Section 8 of the Idaho Constitution, and calls on the House of Representatives and Senate of the state of Idaho to meet in an extraordinary session beginning on June 23rd, 2020. So what they were asserting is that because he enacted 1008 and because he enacted 46601, that he had declared that we were under attack. The president himself said we're under attack, and in doing so believed that there were other laws pertaining to when Idaho's under attack that said if he hadn't called him into a special session, that they had to convene a special session. They had 90 days from the date that he enacted 46601, which would put them at June 23rd. They had to call themselves into session by that law. So several of the House of Representatives, they were willing to convene and have that special session. Several of them, for many reasons, they didn't want to get into this fight yet, and they didn't show up. But this was the letter that they wrote, and it said, be it further resolved, we find that the governor has exceeded in his executive authority, and where such authority is authorized by state law, the legislature should revoke that power. So they're saying, hey, you've exceeded your authority, and it's time for us to revoke your power and take it back. Be it further resolved that the legislature, being vested with the authority for public monies under the state constitution, should appropriate the remaining money allocated to Idaho under the Federal CARES Act or any other legislation that provides COVID-19 funding to the state. And they're right. It's the legislature's duty. They have the power of the public purse. It is their duty to allocate funds, be it funds that come from our tax dollars or funds that come from federal assistance in a situation such as we have been going through this year. Be it further resolved that copies of this resolution be provided to the governor, lieutenant governor, and all state lawmakers whose constituents are represented by this body, passed and adopted this 13th day of May 2020. Reason I'm reading you all of this, let's back up just a little bit. Because here's what our forefathers said that the king had done. He had forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance. Well, by not allowing the legislature to take place and to assist the governor in handling this COVID-19 crisis, our governor has forbidden our legislature from passing laws of immediate and pressing importance. It goes on. I'm going to enlarge this so you can read it. So, if you'll recall, the crowd gathered at the State House as 15 Idaho legislators hold the special session. So they did hold their special session. And a proclamation was read calling for a special legislative session, and it claimed Republican Governor Brad Little's pandemic orders were unconstitutional. They said, whereas the governor's office has exceeded its authority and violated the Constitution's separation of powers provision, he said, exercising powers properly belonging to the legislature, deliberately preventing and avoiding legislative participation as required by law. Once again, our Constitution allocates the public purse to the House of Representatives. However, Governor Little went on a spending spree. And not only did he go on a spending spree, he put together his own committee, says, I'm going to show you, to make it look as though he was taking, that he had other people making those decisions. However, as I'm going to show you here in a little bit, he just made them an advisory committee so they could advise him. But Governor Little, King Little, wanted the ultimate power. He wanted the decision making, and he didn't want anybody else to take part in those decisions. He wanted that ultimate authority. Fast forward to August 24th, 2020. The House of Representatives sent this out. They said this was their declaration to the governor, telling him that we no longer need to be under a special emergency. Okay, our the emergency declaration needs to end. They said, now therefore be it resolved by the members of the first extraordinary session of the 65th Idaho Legislature, the House of Representatives, and the Senate concurring therein, that there is no longer a need for a statewide emergency declaration, and the state of disaster emergency in Idaho is declared to be terminated as of the date of passage of this concurrent resolution. Be it further resolved that a copy of this concurrent resolution shall be transmitted immediately upon passage to the governor of the state of Idaho. When the Senate got that, they did not enact it. They said it was unconstitutional under the state of Idaho because we ran into a problem, and I explained this in the other video, that the Constitution of Idaho states that the governor has to call any special sessions of the legislature. However, 46-1008 says that the governor can enact that disaster emergency for 30 days and then he can extend it for another 30 days. Well, Governor Little's been a little tricky on this one because what he's done is about every 30 to 60 days, he amends it. So he amends the declaration, therefore starting the time clock over so that he can still govern under 46-1008, and still under 46-601, which is martial law. And so he's giving himself all the power, and he's kind of playing around with the law, which was never intended to be able to allow him just to continue 1008 on and on and on. 30 days with a single 30-day extension, and the legislature can end that at any time, but by tweaking it, changing it, and then putting out an order that supersedes it, he believes he's changing the clock and starting that clock over and over and over again. And so he is determined to keep power without the House and Senate. Now, by definition of our forefathers, that is an act of tyranny. But that's not all. The Senate, even though they recognize that the legislature could not convene constitutionally, because when a law and the Constitution of the state of Idaho are in contradiction, when they conflict, the Constitution always wins. And that's the way it's supposed to be in our nation. And our Idaho legislature, our Idaho Senate recognizes that, hey, even though we're out of control as a nation, we've got to keep ourselves under control as the state of Idaho. And so they wouldn't hear that resolution that was sent up by the House, but they did draft this resolution to say, now therefore be it resolved, let's blow this up so you can read along with me, by the members of the Senate assembled in the first extraordinary session of the 65th Idaho Legislature, that the Senate of the state of Idaho calls on the governor to end the state of emergency, but in a manner that preserves financial support for Idaho's hospitals and nursing homes and keeps the regulatory reductions in place for Idaho citizens. So they called on him to end it, but they didn't stop there. Much like our forefathers, our founders of our nation, when they penned the Declaration of Independence and they went on to list out all the offenses of the king, our Senate more or less listed out the offenses of Governor Little. And they said, let's blow this up again. Now let's just go full screen. Let's make sure you can read this, because this is great. They said, be it further resolved by the Idaho Senate that in the next regular session of the Idaho legislature, the following matters be considered for legislation. A declaration that all Idahoans who work, provide for families, pay taxes, and otherwise contribute to the Idaho economy must be deemed essential in any declared emergency. So they said, okay, Governor Little, let's start off with the offense of picking the winners and the losers. All men are created equal. Is that not what our forefathers wrote? They said all men are created equal, and that they have equal protection under the law. And yet our governor said, well, these businesses are essential. These people are not essential. It's an unequal application of the law to the citizens of Idaho to say, well, you can work, you can't. You can earn a living, you can't. You can provide for your families, but you can't. And they said, we're not going to allow this to happen anymore. When we get together, we're going to discuss this, and we are going to seriously consider, and I'm sure they will, making a law that you can't do this to people anymore. That's tyrannical. They went on to say, an amendment to the Idaho Constitution providing that in limited circumstances, the Idaho legislature may call itself back into session while remaining a part-time citizen legislature. So they said, this idea that you're going to hold down our legislature and not let them convene, not let them discuss what you're doing and be a part of the process, there is a balance of power, and we're not going to let you do this anymore either. They also went on to say in Part 3, a limitation on the length of any emergency declaration of the governor without the concurrence of the legislature. So Governor Little has decided he can just keep dragging this on and on and on and on and on because, hey, let's face it. What king doesn't want to get power and keep that power for as long as he can keep it? Why would he want the headache of dealing with the legislature? Why would he want the headache of dealing with the Senate? Why does he want anybody else's opinion? It's how a tyrannical king acts. It's what our forefathers were fighting against, because they were writing their own laws, and he was coming in and saying, no, those laws, we're not going to listen to those laws. We're not going to hear those laws. Here's my laws. And that's what King Little's doing in the state of Idaho. And then they went on to say, a limitation on the emergency powers and spending authority of the executive branch without the approval of the legislature. We're not going to let you just go spend money anymore, Mr. Little, or any governor from here on out. We made a mistake. When we wrote these laws and put them in place, we gave a little bit too much trust to the moral code of man. And therefore, we recognize now we see the error of our ways. We're going to fix that. And we're not going to let you go off and spend money anymore like this. They're telling him what he's doing wrong. They're telling him the tyranny that he has put on the state of Idaho, and that he is acting as a king. Even though they can't write this into law now, come January, buddy, I guarantee they fix this. Number 5, a prohibition on quarantining healthy individuals. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our King Little has told people that if you're healthy, you need to stay home. His stay-at-home orders, right? They're saying, no, we're not going to let you do that anymore, because that goes against our Constitution. That goes against the everything that our nation was founded on. And you can't do this to us anymore. And they also proclaimed, number 6, the ending of orders prohibiting Idahoans from attending places of worship. That is one of that's the first part of our Constitution, is that you can't limit people from assembling. But yet our governor has done it. Is that not the definition of a tyrant? But it goes on. Rescinding existing emergency declarations and a review of the authority of the public health districts and local government subdivisions, because King Little picked and chose which organizations he wanted to listen to and which ones he was going to allow authority. And instead of our legislature, our House of Representatives and our Senate having the authority and having the rule, having the balance of powers to help us get through this crisis, he said, nah, I'm going to let these ones over here that I like. I'm going to let them rule with me. But I'm just going to let them advise me. And because, hey, I'm over them. 46601 gave him complete control over all state-run organizations. Why we ever did this in Idaho, I will never know it. Did we not learn from history? But we did it. We trusted. Maybe it was just a mistake of the pen. I don't know. But we gave him that kind of control. But he didn't have to take it. Okay, we can blame ourselves a little bit. We can blame our predecessors for putting this in place. But at the end of the day, it was King Little that decided to take that authority and to just push it and force it onto the citizens of the state of Idaho, and to just push our legislature out of the way and run on down the road the way he saw fit. That, to me, I don't know about you, but to me, that's a tyrant. But it goes on. This was one of the other offenses that our forefathers said that the king was guilty of. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. Well, I don't know that he's sent anybody to eat out our substance, but he has certainly picked the winners and losers, hasn't he? He said, you guys get to work and you guys don't. But what about the new offices? April 7th, 2020, Executive Order number 2020-07. Whereas the receipt of federal funding must not impede or inhibit the state's constitutional mandate to provide a long-term structurally balanced budget for the people of Idaho. Now, therefore, I, Brad Little, Governor of the state of Idaho, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution and laws of this state, do hereby order the creation of a COVID-19 Financial Advisory Committee to be headed by the Administrator of the Division of Financial Management and comprised of members appointed by and serving at the pleasure of the Governor. Isn't that so sweet? They are serving at the pleasure of the Governor. Isn't that wording a little odd? That should frighten you. Isn't it? That doesn't sound like a governor in a constitutionally run republic, does it? They're serving at the pleasure of the governor. But that should give you a little insight into how our governor thinks. During this period of time, he's decided that only he's smart enough, that only he's wise enough, and that he should be the ruler to carry us through this pandemic. And he'll appoint people to advise him at the pleasure of the governor. But it continues on. Idaho governor forms committees to tackle school reopening, digital divide. He appointed people to handle that rather than listening to our legislature, rather than relying on the vast number of people in our House of Representatives and our Senate, smart people, wise people, people who represent you and me. He doesn't want people who represent us interfering in his decision-making process, because King Little understands best. King Little knows best. King Little will guide us through this pandemic. And then this is the worst. Okay, let's back up, because let's look at both parts of what they said. They asserted that the king, not the king of Idaho, the king of Great Britain, has erected a multitude of new offices, which sounds familiar, and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people. Well, look what just happened here on the 24th of August. King Little didn't like the people of the state of Idaho coming up to lend their opinions on how things should be done. No, King Little, look at this picture. Let me bring this back up. He sent them in riot gear. Our Idaho State Police and Boise Police showed up in riot gear to disperse what started off as a very calm crowd. Go back and watch my video last week if you haven't already. Watch how the people, when they showed up, they were calm. In fact, they didn't get upset until they were told that they couldn't come in and listen to what was going on and be witness to what was going on, which is their constitutionally protected right in the state of Idaho to do so. But this is what was waiting for them. This is what was waiting for them when they got there. Those officers didn't just show up. They were there. They knew people were going to show up to voice their opinions. And King Little made sure that he had plenty of officers there to intimidate those people. And even some of them got arrested for sitting in the wrong cotton picking chair. Are you kidding me? Does this not sound like a little bit of tyrannical harassment to you? You sat in the wrong chair, and by golly, we can't have that. We can't have you sitting in the wrong chair. Oh, you have on a press pass, but it's not the right press pass. And by the way, that press pass, I ought to talk about that a little bit, because it's the, I believe it's the Idaho Press Tribune that members of the Idaho Press Tribune get to decide who does and does not get the appropriate press pass to sit in those chairs. That should be looked at. Why? Why do they get to decide who's press and who's not? It's the right of the free press. You should be able to report on what's going on. If you're press, simply, hey, do you report? Yes. Okay, here's a press pass. Go sit up there. But no. That's not good enough for our legislature and for our king. You've got to have the right one, the one that I give you permission to be the right press. There's something a little bit screwy with that too. They arrested him for people wearing press passes, but they weren't the right ones, sitting in the press chairs. And then Ammon Bundy. Now, we all have our own opinion about Ammon Bundy. Look, I think I'm going to stop for just a second and say I believe Ammon Bundy, his heart's in the right place. Okay, Ammon really he just wants to end an oppressive government, and so did our forefathers. He goes about things a little bit extreme sometimes, and makes himself into a martyr, and so, doggone it, guy, I wish he'd use a little bit more wisdom there. But to his credit, his protest was to go up there afterwards and sit in the chair, and he got himself arrested for it. Okay, but did it warrant this? And look at how that affected the taxpayers. Big ISP bill comes in from Idaho Special Session. State police cost the state $78,600 in 3 days, with more bills pending from the Boise Police Department. Your governor. Is this how you want the state run? Does this not sound just a little bit tyrannical? I mean, I'm not tinfoil hat here. I'm just laying out the facts. The same way our forefathers did when they wrote their Declaration of Independence from King. Let's continue on. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. Well, let's just take a look now. Let's go back to 46-601, and let's take a look and see just exactly what that did. So on the March 23rd, Brad Little signed this proclamation here. Now, therefore, I, Brad Little, Governor of the State of Idaho, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Idaho, and the laws of this state, including sections 46-601 and 46-1008 Idaho Code, do hereby find and therefore proclaim and declare The proclamation I issued on March 13th, 2020 is hereby amended to incorporate this proclamation, and there exists a condition of extreme peril to the safety of persons and property within the state of Idaho caused by the increasing presence of the 2019 novel coronavirus, COVID-19, which by reasons of its magnitude is beyond the control of the services, personnel, equipment, and facilities of any city or county. Accordingly, I find that there exists an extreme emergency within the state of Idaho. Now, notice how nicely he did that. He never ever called it martial law. He just referred to it as a declaration of extreme emergency. But let's take a look at what 46601 really is. And I've covered this before, but for any of you that are just jumping in, this is Title 46, Chapter 6, 46601. Can you see that right there? Do I need to zoom in? I want to make sure you see this. That is 46601, authority of the governor. Martial law and active duty. Are you looking at this title? Don't miss it. Martial law and active duty. The authority of the governor. Under 46601, the governor shall have the power in the event of a state of extreme emergency to order into the active service of the state, the National Guard, or any part thereof, and the organized militia, or any part thereof, or both, as he may deem proper. Under Part 2, during a period of a state of extreme emergency, the governor shall have complete authority over all agency of the state government, including all separate boards and commissions, and the right to exercise within the area or regions wherein the state of extreme emergency exists all police power vested in the state by the Constitution and the laws of the state of Idaho. In the exercise thereof, he is authorized to promulgate, issue, and enforce rules, regulations, and orders which he considers necessary for the protection of life and property. And it goes on from there. Let's go back. Let's go back. What did our forefathers assert that the king had done? He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to civil power. Is not declaring martial law and taking over the military and all police power in the state of Idaho, rendering the military independent of and superior to the civil power? Isn't taking the legislature, the House of Representatives, and the Senate and just shoving them aside and not listening to them so they have no power, declaring martial law and saying you can't do anything about this? Is he not the supreme authority in the state of Idaho right now? Is that not affecting to render the military independent of and superior to civil power? Let's keep going forward. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretend legislation. Now, this is going to take a little bit more work, so bear with me just a moment to bring this up on the screen. But this is important. Okay, so there is a website. I don't know how I even got here, but this gentleman that goes by freedomman.org had sent this to our legislature, and when he was asking them to convene. And he did a great job of putting together this information, and I want to just take a look. Special legislative sessions required by law on June 3rd. He goes on to make his case for that. The governor did not specify as if his executive order was based on 46601 A or B. Therefore, the definition of an attack, according to 46601, may be used as the justification for the governor's emergency powers. So he's let me back up. I don't think this is even where I think I was fast forwarding a little bit. I'm sorry, guys. So that's a whole nother discussion. That's a discussion that I'm not going to get into right now. That's a whole nother legal issue, and if you should go there and read this and look at it, because he does make a good case. But attorneys throughout the state of Idaho have said that the Constitution still wins, and this is where we're at. But this is not the case I want to make today. Today we're talking about whether or not the governor is a tyrant and whether or not I was fair calling him one. So let's go back and let's look at the constitutional law being suspended, because this is what the governor did do. So the constitutional law has been suspended and martial law has been implemented in Idaho. Constitutional rights have been suspended in the state of Idaho by Governor Brad Little's stay-at-home executive order. At a minimum, the following rights have been suspended. The First Amendment. Governor Little's order demands that there be no gatherings of any number of individuals outside the household. This is a clear violation of the First Amendment, which plainly states that the government shall make no law prohibiting the right of the people to peacefully assemble. So you can't say there's no gatherings. That is a constitutional right. And what was the assertion by our forefathers? He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution. Is that not what Governor Little did with the stay-at-home order? But let's continue. The Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, let's read right here, expressly states that no person shall be deprived of liberty without due process of law. Case law has established that this means that Americans have the right to travel. Oh, I'm not bringing this up. I want you to read this with me. Case law has established that this means that the Americans have the right to travel without being impeded by the government. This right has been clearly established in numerous cases throughout history. However, Governor Little's order, as published, states all non-essential travel must cease. Once again, he's combined us with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretend legislation. 14th Amendment. The Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment clearly states, nor shall any state deny to any persons within its jurisdiction the equal protection of laws. Governor Little's order does that very thing. It defines certain businesses as essential, while others are non-essential. This is not the equal protection of laws. He's saying that some of the businesses are open and some of them are closed. That's not equal protection of law. It's saying that I'm going to pick the winners and the losers here. I'm deciding who can make money and who can't make money. Who can provide for their family, who cannot provide for their family. Who's going to be able to pay their bills, who's not. What businesses are going to succeed and which ones are going to go under. Over 350 businesses just on Yelp have gone under because of Governor Little's orders. Suspending this Constitution is illegal. I don't care how you try to package it and how you try to make it smell fresh and great. I don't care if you think it's a good reason or not. The Constitution is the Constitution. And by the way, I have defended our Constitution in the Senate's decision to not hear the House's declaration. Okay? The Constitution has to come first, folks, even if we don't like it, even if we don't like the reasons, even if we think that we're trying to do good things by passing laws and mandates that are unconstitutional. It doesn't matter. We have to have a sacred document, our Constitution. If we start whittling away at it for this, what's going to happen in the future? How far are they going to whittle away at our rights? How far are they going to whittle away at our Constitution? We're already seeing it happen across the nation. And we've got to get back to that Constitution. It's why we're seeing the crisis that we see right now. It's why our nation is in such peril right now, because we've infringed on our Constitution under the guise of good reasoning. We cannot allow this to happen. And our forefathers recognized it. Let's go on. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government, and for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. This is what our governor has done over and over again. This one's going to shock you. Governor Little suspended parents' rights. Governor Little used his emergency powers to suspend Idaho laws that protect children in state custody and ensure that parental rights are maintained. Governor Little has suspended over 100 different codes and laws in Idaho. Some of those are visitation for child parents or legal guardians. It says visitation arrangements must be provided to the child's parent or legal guardian unless visitation is contrary to the child's safety. Parents all across Idaho rely on this to have a part in their kids' lives, to have a part in raising their children, to be there for them when right now, when life is so unsure. And Governor Little stripped parents of those rights. He suspended them. Why? I don't even care. I don't even want to know. You can't do this. Notification of change in placement. So he suspended the law saying that you've got to let the other parent know if you're going to move the kid or if the state's going to move the kid. Parents have a right to know if a kid's been moved. But he took that away. Notification of change in visitation. Notification of right to participate in appeal. All of these rights have been suspended. In fact, take a look at this. The appended list of state administrative rules are hereby suspended for the duration of the declared state of emergency in order to ensure these administrative rules do not in any way prevent, hinder, or delay unnecessary action in coping with the emergency. These are all laws that Governor Little suspended. And this isn't even the entire list, folks. Governor Little, in his infinite wisdom, has decided that the laws that our legislature put in place are not important. That over 100 laws that dictate how our medical offices operate, how our health departments operate, how our children are handled and dealt with by the state, visitation rights, that those are not important enough and that those can be suspended during this period of time, and that should scare you. Once again, what is it that our forefathers asserted? They said that the king suspended our own legislatures and declared themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever, including just throwing away laws that are on the books to protect our rights, both to have good medical care and to have good parental involvement in our children's lives. Our forefathers said that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with the certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Unalienable means not transferable to another or not capable of being taken away or denied. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are inalienable rights. They cannot be taken away. They are not given to us by the government. Those rights are protected from the government by our Constitution. We should never ever allow anybody to take away those rights from us, because those are not given to us by King Little. Those are not, if they can be taken away even for a period of time, they are not unalienable rights. They are privileges. And our Constitution did not call these things privileges. They called them rights, unalienable rights. And liberty as defined, I lost my slide. Liberty is the ability to choose for ourselves how to act, what to do, where to work, when not to work. It is where to go, how to worship. That's an inalienable right. It's something that our government should never be allowed to take away from us. But Governor Little issued statewide stay-at-home orders. He fined businesses for opening early, and he defined what early was. He told saloons and bars that if they violate his plan, if they don't listen to King Little, that you're putting your license at risk. And he's allowed schools to mandate masks, which may seem like a little thing, but yet it's still our inalienable right, our life, our liberty, our pursuit of happiness. It is our right to dictate medical care for our children. Is Governor Little a tyrant? In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of the free people. Is Governor Little acting as a tyrant? Should he remain in office? I've presented the evidence. You decide how you feel about it. I'll be watching your comments. This is Shane Talks Politics. Good day.